Hey, friends. I want to pose a question today. What do we get out of social media? I don't mean interacting with our friends. I don't mean watching a really meaningful video. I don't mean that. What I mean is the scrolling. You'll know what I mean. The scrolling. The scroll, the scroll, the scroll. Whenever we're in a down moment in our lives, the phone comes out, our favorite social media app pops open, and we start scrolling. We're scrolling. What are we searching for when we're doing that? Well, I gave this problem some thought earlier in the year, and what I came up with was what I was searching for was a simple escape, an escape from my own mind, a break from the discipline, from the grind, from all the things that I order myself to do, and just to relax into a different perspective. But social media wasn't a peaceful distraction. It didn't leave me feeling settled or well. It left me feeling scattered and distracted. So I asked myself, how could I get something similar, but without it being like this? And what I came up with was a return to my old hobby of reading science fiction. This is my old e-ink Kindle with the keyboard, a very old device. Still works a charm. Cool thing about it, it has this case and it plugs into the device, has this cool light. Isn't this cool? What a neat piece of technology. Anyway, it still works a charm and has all the old books I loaded on it. And so I just picked up my Kindle after I charged it and I opened up the first book that I can remember loving and blowing up my imagination. And that was what I just showed, A Fire Upon the Deep by Werner Vinge. I just finished reading on that Kindle A Fire Upon the Deep, its sequel, A Deepness in the Sky, and then the last of the three books in the series, Children of the Sky. And I wanted to talk a little bit about what I got out of those books, just gush and blab a little bit, and just, I guess, give a report on how well it's been going, substituting science fiction for social media. Fire Upon the Deep is an incredible, like, thrill ride of a sci-fi book. Um, like most thrillers, the characters aren't like the most important thing. What's really important is the setting and the momentum and the action. And the action of this is takes place on a galactic scale where you're living in a world where there are many, many, many civilizations that grew up in different parts of the galaxy, and they all can travel to meet each other. It's a very metropolitan, cosmopolitan world of the intermingling of different civilizations, of which humanity is one. What happens in this book is has to do with this underlying feature of the setting called the zones of thought, which also names the trilogy of books. The zones of thought are a sort of striation of the galaxy. If you see the galaxy in terms of concentric circles or spheres in this case, closer to the galaxy core is are the what are called the unending depths, a place where very little technology is possible. Mind and intelligence may spring forth, but it's very limited in what it can do. Beyond this is the slow zone. This is where our own Earth is located. It's a place where intelligence can be birthed and can grow in technology to a certain point, which we can all imagine because we all happen to live in it. One of the key constraints of the slow zone, no faster than light travel, which makes it impossible to have a cosmopolitan, intercivilizational culture. However, if you get past the slow zone, if you go out into the dimmer parts of the galaxy, you'll eventually reach the beyond, a place where higher levels of technology are available because of the changes to the substrate of physics itself. And what that results in is a mingling of humans with non-humans with all kinds of other races that it's just an incredibly vivid vision of this. And that's where the majority of the action of Fire Upon the Deep takes place. It's worth mentioning that there is one more zone of thought that is discussed and is an important feature of this work, which is the transcend. The transcend is a place where even higher levels of technology than the beyond are possible. It's further out from the galactic core. And it's a place where civilizations go to attempt to transcend into godhood. Because when civilizations do succeed in this, what they end up resembling looks to people like gods. They're capable of things that are difficult to imagine, their purposes are hard to understand. They do at times come and visit the beyond, but their powers there are less impressive. And when they come, there's sort of like a stooping down to the lessers that needs to occur in order for any interaction to happen. This book itself, the action kicks off when a power is reborn from an ancient archive in the beyond. This is done by a human civilization that is attempting to transcend and use this archive to do it. Little do they know, they've let the devil out of its cage because this power turns out to be what's called a perversion. Now, everything that I've told you so far is the early pages of this book and doesn't spoil very much. And in truth, I don't want to spoil very much about these books. But hopefully what I've done is painted this picture of a place where incredible things can happen and talked about how it wakes the imagination. And that's what I've always loved about science fiction. Um, the way this book ends is just fantastic. It makes total sense according to the setting. You don't see it coming. There are so many other cool ideas that occur, including this incredible character named Pham Nguyen, who I can't wait for you to meet if you choose to read this book, and who comes back in A Deepness in the Sky. Um, and that's the second book that needs to be discussed, Deepness in the Sky. So Fire Upon the Deep ends. Um, and Deepness in the Sky is a very different kind of book. It's a little less of a thriller and it's a little more character centered. It's the author drilling deeper into the motivations of the characters that inhabit it. It moves very slowly, it bubbles up, it boils very slowly. And essentially, what it centers around is this group of people, this civilization within the slow zone that don't know they're in the slow zone. They have never heard of the zones of thought. This is a human civilization trying to live an interstellar life where traveling between the stars means accelerating to sublight speeds and essentially refrigerating yourself so you can make the voyage. So if you leave home, go on a voyage and come back, you could come back 1,000 years later than you left, even though for you only maybe 5 to 10 years had passed. As you can imagine, this has strange effects on culture. And one of the things that this results in is a group of traders who travel the stars and have their own sort of inward facing culture. And they're called the Cheng Ho. Now, introduce into the Cheng Ho this young prince from a pre technical civilization named Pham Nguyen. And what ends up sort of happening over time is a greater vision of the Cheng Ho that Pham Nguyen manages to get recruited into and then to start work his way up into and convinces people to believe in. Where rather than being a simple trading culture that travels between the stars, the vision of the Cheng Ho is to be a buttress against the death of civilization. Because one of the main problems that faces humanity is the fact that yes, they can travel between the stars. Yes, they can develop themselves to this incredible point of technology, at least from our 21st century perspective. But it always seems to end, whether by pandemic, whether by extra, celestial events, or by simply blowing themselves up. These civilizations always destroy themselves, blow themselves back to the Stone Age, metaphorically. Many of them do come back. They can dig into the wreckage and recreate what was lost. Some don't. And one of the grand visions of this Cheng Ho is to be a buffer against the end of civilizations like this, with the idea that it can build up humanity to be a better, bigger thing. Um, it's a very cool vision, but this vision is extremely far away from reality at the start of the book. What the book centers around is an expedition to a strange star that seems to mysteriously disappear and then reappear every couple of hundred years. When this Cheng Ho expedition arrives, it finds another expedition from another human civilization they don't know very much about. And they decide to enter a sort of uneasy truce to co-explore the area. And things get rather explosive very quickly. The book is all about what it's like for these two civilizations to live with each other after one has betrayed the other while getting to know this place they've arrived at, which turns out to have a race of sentient spiders who slumber for 200 years while their star is turned off. Very, very cool setting, and actually some really interesting character stuff that occurs. There are a few key relationships. One of the strange themes of Deepness in the Sky is this like princess in a cage thing. There are three dyads, relationships, I suppose, that are characterized by these female characters who are in these terrible entrapped situations and with and a connection to a man who could possibly save them. And I'm not going to tell you what these are in case you decide to read it because you should explore it for yourself. But it's interesting because each of these sort of sets of rescuers and damsels in distress, I suppose, have different like sort of levels of relationship maturity. One is like puppy love, one is like mature love, and the other one is like I don't know, like what you could think of as like a sort of purposeful love, coming together to bring the best of each other and solve big problems. A partnership, perhaps. I don't know. Anyway, this book was good, and it did so well. Something that uh, Fire Upon the Deep also did very well, which to give these two differing perspectives that as the story develops, the stakes and the way that they interdepend becomes more and more clear. But still, it takes time and time and time until the very end when it all comes together and all the payoffs happen. It's like boom, 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 boom. Fire Upon the Deep and Deepness in the Sky, I can recommend without hesitation to anyone who's ever enjoyed reading a work of fiction and likes science fiction. So good. And for me, these two books were immensely preferable to scrolling social media. There's something very different about. You see, a book is sort of like a long argument, and it's all told from one person's perspective, the author. Um, and there's something very relaxing and very patient about spending a long time with one person's argument and perspective, what they have to say, what their vision is, rather than the constant scrolling and flipping and flipping and flipping of attention. Let's look at this. Let's look at this. Let's look at this. A book unfolds word by word, page by page, and there's something grounding about it by comparison. And I think I'm gonna keep doing it. Um, Now, I did read Children of the Sky. This book is a bit of a departure compared to the first two. It's a chance for the author to go back to the pre technical civilization of the first book, Fire Upon the Deep, where there's a race of basically dog creatures that have super attenuated hearing and speaking capabilities. And when four to six of them come together in a small group, they can communicate in a way that raises their level of intelligence to like the level of a person. So these dog creatures see personhood not at the individual dog level, but at the pack level. A pack of dogs is a person. And this book gives the author a chance to go back and explore a lot of what else that could look like. It doesn't really have the extra galactic stuff. It doesn't really have a lot of the science fictiony stuff of the first two books. In fact, it doesn't. Other than having the same kinds of creatures thematically, it doesn't feel very connected. But it was good to spend a little more time with the dog creatures called the Tines. Fire Upon the Deep and the Deepness in the Sky. Ooh, I would love to see some movie maker take a crack at these stories someday. That would just be so gratifying to see. Um, and yes, I think after, let's see, it's been about a month of substituting scrolling with science fiction. I don't never scroll at all, but it's very different when I go into the small moments in my life where I need a little break. Usually it's just like when I'm going to the bathroom or like when I'm waiting for my wife to get ready for something, or when I'm trying to fall asleep. Um, I think it's made my life better than it was. And it didn't take a dramatic invention. It didn't take a huge gesture. It was just actually going back to something that used to work for me before, something I used to do all the time before I got embroiled in the world of social media. And it's been pretty cool. And it's 3 books down in 2023. You'll see how much more I do. I also have an ambition to do nonfiction reading. I think of it as reading not for pleasure, but for purpose and for learning this year. And so far, I've not made much ground on that goal. So I'm hoping that in the coming months, I'll be able to report that I've started doing the exploration of serious literature and philosophy that I really want to do. But stay tuned for that, I guess. Till then, till then, be good to yourself and to each other. And I'll see you all very soon.